Well, hi, everybody. That was good. I like that woo there. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming out on this cold, blustery day. Man, it's super cold out, isn't it? Well, we're really excited about today's talk. We've got 2 new exhibitions that are opening today, and there's 3 exhibitions that are carries over from January that are still up. So you're sitting in the exhibition by David Modler, Samuel Peck, and Michael Dodson. And if maybe you came through this way, but if you go through the brick wall here, you'll be in the room with Dominie Nash's work. Just off of the East Gallery, where Dominie's work is our M&T Gallery, and there's work that opened in January by Maremi Andriozzi. So spend some time in there. And then if you go up to the 2nd floor, there's 2 gallery spaces upstairs. Alfred Groff has work in the hall upstairs, and then Ann Boyer has some sculptural ceramic work in the Moreland Gallery in the 2nd floor. So Dominie Nash is a full-time studio art quilter who is primarily self-taught. She works in Washington, D.C., and has spent the past 50 years learning and practicing her art making. After Dominie will be David Modler, Samuel Peck, and Michael Dodson. David Modler has a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Education in Art Education from Towson State University, and his Master's of Fine Art in Painting from James Madison University. Modler currently serves as a professor of art and the chair of the Department of Contemporary Art, Communication, and Theater at Shepherd University in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Samuel Peck is an artist, researcher, teacher living in Warwick, Rhode Island. Peck holds a BFA in printmaking and drawing from the University of Rhode Island and an MFA in printmaking and drawing from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Peck is a PhD student in art education at the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Minnesota. And Michael Dodson is a mixed media artist exploring the intersections of drawing, painting, and printmaking. Using color, shape, texture, and pattern, he layers materials to create depth and shifting spaces where representation and abstraction meet. Would you all give a round of applause to Dominie Nash as she comes up? Just watch your step there. Thanks, Dominie.
Yeah, it's pretty brave to ask for applause before I talk. You don't know. Anyway, I'm just so delighted to be back exhibiting at the Delaplane again. I've been, as you see from my work, I'm sort of obsessed with leaves, and I love printing, and so my work is really printing and stitching combined. But I started working with the leaves, about 20 years ago. And in 2012, I had a solo show of my leaf quilts up to that point. And these are just some pictures that I took at that exhibition. So at that point, I had done maybe 30 pieces, and now it's up to almost 50, and then a bunch of small things. So I started out just getting inspired. I've always used leaves in one way or another in my work, but I found some really big leaves, and size has been important to me in this project because they're just fascinating to see these enormous things that hang on a tree. So I was out walking and I saw some deciduous magnolia leaves, and I think some of them are in some of these quilts, but they're like about that high. And of course, I picked them up and took them home. I'm sort of shameless about grabbing leaves where I see them. If you notice anything missing from your garden, it might be me. So I brought those big leaves home and they sat around and they started to deteriorate, so I had to do something quick. So I decided I was going to try to do some prints with them. And since then, I have been just finding more leaves. I've figured out ways to preserve them to some extent, but it doesn't always work. And the dark pieces involve doing the same kind of printing, but using chemicals that take the color out of black fabric. And afterwards, if anybody wants to know any details about the process when we're looking at the work later, I'm happy to share with you. So there's some more of the dark ones. Excuse me one second. I forgot to turn my phone off and you're going to hear weird things. So. It's not something you're supposed to do. Okay. So now I'm showing you now some photos. I wish I took better shots of the process, but this is it. So this is me many years ago in one of my studios, and I don't know how much you can see it, but what I've done here is I put the leaves on the table, and I put a piece of fabric on top of the leaves, put paint on a roller, and just roll right over the fabric and the leaves, and it picks up all the veins and imperfections and everything in the leaf. And then one of the nice things about this kind of printing is that you get interesting things going on between the leaves. So you see the edge of the leaf and then this sort of strange patterning in between. And I do a process that involves screen printing, but it's sort of an unusual process where you actually put the image right on the screen with dye or paint, and I can explain that in detail if anybody who's interested later. But here's a screen on top of a bunch of leaves, and there is a print from that screen. And the interesting thing about this process is every print you make is a little bit different because you're using up more of the dye comes out onto the fabric and less on the screen, and so you can have this beautiful progression of, it's called deconstructed or breakdown printing. And those are just the leaves after I put the dye on them. You can see that they're covered with dye. These are some leaves that I printed with a gelatin plate, which some of you may know about. It's basically a monoprint technique. And these are some of the fabrics before I've made them into the quilts. So these are two prints from the same screen. Oop, I don't know what that one was. And these are also two prints from the same screen, and you can see how it gets paler as you go along. So sometimes I put all these together and show them as one sort of modular piece. There is just a print with the roller using textile paint. And that is a banana leaf. So one of the pieces I had in the first show here was a very, very big, it's like 6 by 6 foot piece with banana leaves, which are not easy to print. I tell you, they do not want to lie flat, but you get interesting things. There's some more pieces of fabric, and these are some of the earlier quilts shown up close. There is more of the deconstructed printing. These are some hosta leaves, which I stole from my neighbor. And here are some more hosta leaves, but this is done with the chemicals that remove the color. And you find all sorts of interesting things when you take black fabric and remove the color. You could get almost any color underneath it. Most of them are beige or gray, but I've had some red and some green. And the whole thing about the dyeing and printing is that it's sort of mysterious and surprising. I never know what I'm going to get. And sometimes I'm not very happy, but everything goes into a pile and gets cut up for something else if it didn't work out the way I thought it would. And I've used several different black fabrics in some of these pieces, so you see different background colors. And here's one where I've started to just move the leaves around a little bit to make a more irregular kind of composition. Okay, now these the next group you're seeing are pieces from the show. Corey took some photos for me, and I don't even remember what he took, but I'll recognize them. So this is sort of an offshoot of this series. I've been doing a lot of work where I take old pieces and redo them. Sometimes I cut them up, I put more fabric on the surface, or I take a really bad piece and paint it black, which is, people say, how could you be so brave? I said, because what it was, I want to hide it. So I painted the whole piece black, and you can see the texture that was underneath it and the quilting, and you can see it when you look closely. And then I coated leaves with gesso and printed them onto the black paint. And I've done probably 6 or 7 of these. This was the only one that had leaves, but I'm having a lot of fun with this project. It's sort of ongoing. Whenever a piece strikes me as something that needs to be hidden, I pull it out and paint it black. This piece is done with the same kind of monoprint process that I talked about before, where you draw on the screen, but in this case I did rubbings of leaves with water-soluble crayons. There's a water-soluble graphite, and there are pastels, and any of these will work with this process. So I scribbled all over these fabrics with the crayons over a leaf, and then made prints with a clear, like an acrylic medium or a textile medium, to get the color and the pattern on the fabric. And this is the one that's on the end wall there. These are also, I'm not sure if these are banana leaves or the magnolia leaves. I think they're banana leaves. Anyway, this was I just took each leaf to make a separate piece. I just kind of like the idea of having these small units. This is another one that was done with water-soluble crayons. Most of the pieces, as you've seen, are black and white. And I just branched off a little bit into color, so I had some kind of earth tones here. And this piece was done on old pieces of linen that I found around, and rather than printing directly onto this linen, I took leaves that I had printed on other fabric, cut them out, and appliqued them. This was one of the first ones I did with color, although it was intended to be black. The dye sort of broke down and looked more blue, and I said, I like a little bit of color. So, but people have asked me, why don't you do color? You know, colored leaves are so beautiful, but sort of my focus is the shape and the patterning of the leaf, and not so much the color, even though I love color, you know, fall colored leaves. And this was, you know, some larger prints with smaller prints sewn around the edges. And this is probably the most colorful one I've done. Never used colors like this, but some of the fabrics, the sort of fern-like looking fabrics that are the deep magenta in the background, were things I had done with a silk screen years ago and found in a box. And I said, I'm going to try to combine what I'm doing now with the leaves and these. And so that was fun. This one was also with water-soluble graphite. So it has a very sort of a soft look. It's not the hard edge look that you get with the roller printing. And I think that's the end of my, yes. But if anybody has any questions, you can ask me now, or we can talk later in the gallery. Yeah.
So you quilt these together. Do you go back in and stitch in like on the
Oh, yeah, I do a lot, if you look closely at the
I
pieces.
haven't seen your exhibit.
And I should have put some detail shots in, but I figured you'd be seeing them. But yes, I do a lot of quilting on the surface, either following the veins of the leaves or going in the in-between spaces and making, new patterns that kind of echo those designs. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Obviously, the emphasis is on the abstraction of the leaves, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But they're still leaves. And one
Yes,
of the
they
things
are.
that
They are leaves.
right, one of the things that kind of immediately came to my mind, there is, I think, like a whole genre, a whole vein of conceptual art that's got to do with those old sinographs done with leaves.
Called, what was it?
Sinographs, like.
Oh, cyanotype with the,
Yes,
yes,
right,
and
yes.
I have done a little bit of that.
Right,
Yeah,
and that
and I
kinda
love
like,
that.
I saw like, for example, there was an artist at the National Academies, like in DC, because they have like national teams or science team kind of exhibits over there. And so I was wondering if that's something that you were, thinking about, like, the leaf has, light in it, and then there's the shape, and it's just a whole, thing.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I've actually done some cyanotype and very small amount. I took some workshops years ago and really liked it and somehow didn't get back to it, but that any of the alternative photo processes would work with, a direct contact print with a leaf, and it just has a very different look. And you remind me, I should go back and do some more. Anybody else? All right, well, happy to talk when we go into the gallery later.
So I just go up, okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure, follow protocol. So, hi everybody, welcome. Our talk, I'm gonna start it out and then I'm gonna hand it over to Sam, and then Michael's gonna come up and speak as well. Ours is completely no-tech because you're in the space that we wanna show you. I would also say that showing images of previous shows might not make a lot of sense because this space is specific to this community and to the folks that helped us work on a lot of this that you see here. And then our work changes over time, so there's lots of different things that are happening. And Dominie actually helped me with her talk because she mentioned that when she was doing her work, if it didn't work out or come out the way she wanted, she'd just cut it up and throw it in a pile and then figure out what to do something with it later. Well, that's kind of like this whole show. A lot of this work is recycled, a lot of this work is repurposed and reused. I'll start my little bit of the talk about the kind of the conceptual nature of what's going on here, and then I'll let Sam and Michael come up and kind of fill in some of the gaps that I might leave. So over to the left here, there's a display that has some journals on it. These are journals that I exchange with other people around the world. I've probably got about 400 of those books out there. I don't see all of those books. I might see about 100 of them over time. Some of them I see about once a month. Some of them I see every year. Some of them I don't see for a couple years, and then they just show up at my house. So I work with one other person, and then that book goes back out to that person to be continued, to be collaborated in. And those are just some of those books, and you're welcome to look at those and kind of see the kinds of things that are happening in those spaces. And I would say this entire exhibit started with that notion of wanting to collaborate with other people and get ideas working through me and out into with other people. And part of that process happened when I was in graduate school working on my MFA. I'm in a studio space where I'm surrounded by a lot of artists, and lots of ideas are always kind of ping-ponging back and forward with folks. And then you graduate and you leave and you go back to work, and this sense of community and this sense of collaboration sort of disappears. And so my friend Sam and I were finishing our MFAs around the same time, and we decided we would keep that collaboration going. So we started exchanging a journal with each other, which then expanded to exchanging journals with other people. And here we are 14 years later, and continuing to do this work. So the journals are really sort of the place where this all started. And the first exhibit we did was the work we were making. We were involving the community and working on large paintings on the walls. Cardboard became a viable component for this because it's super light, easy to travel with, and it's free. You can just find it everywhere. So it's repurposing that material and finding another way to use it and represent it in another kind of fashion. And so a lot of the work that you see in here is on cardboard for that purpose. But in grad school, not a lot of money, and cardboard's everywhere. I've got this other wall here with some pieces that are on panels, kind of the same sort of space of thinking about repurposing things. A lot of those panels, I either made them or found them. I've worked at a university for the last 17 years. It is amazing what students will throw away. At the end of a semester, they go through a whole painting class and they throw all their canvases away, and then I'm the one that goes in the dumpster, pulls them all out, and then uses them for something else. So a lot of those have other stuff underneath of them, which is kind of fun too. And that was a process of note-taking and just daily activity. So those were actually all notes that I kept for myself that I did all that stuff, so it disappeared. So I don't know what it is anymore. So a big piece over there. And then I did another larger piece that's back on this side that's starting to take up the space over there. And that's part of a series, I call it the gross. And people think, well, I don't think it's gross, but it's a whole different kind of idea about gross. So a gross of something in industry, it's a dozen. So the idea is there's 144 of those paintings, and they're all 12 by 12 inches. So it's very mathematical too, thinking about it that way. And then on the very back wall, we have a large community drawing. This started from a friend of ours named Steve Lambert, who was doing a project that was going out in the community and talking with people. So his whole purpose was, I will talk to you about anything. And so some people might be out in the park and protesting something or trying to speak to a very particular issue, but Steve's perspective was, I'll just talk about whatever you want to talk about. So he would sit down literally at a bench with a little sign that said, I will talk with anyone about anything. So we met him in North Carolina, and Sam and I sort of thought, like, well, if you can talk with somebody about anything, you could draw with them about anything. So that's how this project started. There's 4 very large panels that anchor this, that were done here at the Delaplane last year as part of a commission. So knowing we were going to do this show for about a year and a half, some planning has been kind of put into place to sort of bring it together. So you can see there's still some empty space. Our goal this month is to fill that space and have one large community conversation on that wall by the time that we're done. And on the columns is another component of this project. There's some small journals there that you are welcome to come and work in as well. Those books travel with this exhibit. So when this exhibit moves to another space, those books will be there. Other people will add to those books too. So in that way, the different communities that this exhibit visits have a way to have a dialogue together as well. If you look inside the front cover of those books, you can see a list where I've written down the different places where these books have been in Baltimore and other places. This is probably, Sam and I were trying to add it up. We think this might be about the 15th iteration of this concept of an exhibit like this, bringing the community together, thinking about a site, responding to that site, and bringing our work into it, and thinking about how that might kind of all come together. And so it's really exciting to be here at the Delaplane. I've been working here part-time for probably about 10 years. So it's really exciting to be part of this. Corey asked me about doing an exhibit here, and I think it took me a year before I gave him a proposal, but finally was able to get all that together, bring some people with me, and make this work happen. So I'm sure there's other things I could tell you, but I want to give some time to my colleagues to share some information too. We will be here in the space, so if you have other questions or want to talk some more, definitely feel free to do that. There's books and materials on the tables there where you can make art that we can add to that wall. And like I said, there's books on the pedestals there, on the columns that you can also just take down, look through, make something in, and become part of this exhibit with us. So I'm gonna let Sam come up and say some more. And then Michael will come up.
Hi, I'm Sam Peck. Corey said it really well. I'm from the Rhode Island area, born and raised there, and I moved back I moved kind of all over the place. Dave kind of named a lot of the places that I moved and lived in, but kind of all over the country. Yeah, I'm back in Rhode Island again. Much of the work we do is about process. Like Dave was saying, the work feeds the work, which feeds the work. I think Jasper John said it really well that you make work, then you do something to it, and then you take that work and you do something else to it, and then you take that work and you do something else to it, and now you really have something that you can work on. So thinking about that as a form of process, Dave and I did start a lot of these collaborative journals together, as he explained much of the history of it. And if you can believe it, these cardboard panels have traveled with us across all those different exhibitions, and then they've also become a piece in and of themselves. So they used to be the walls that we used for a lot of the site-specific work that we do in our installations. And although there's been 16 different iterations, they're never hung the same way. So what you see inside this space and the way that it's placed and hung is different than anything that's ever been exhibited before. So if you can imagine, this is a kind of like a living work that changes and metamorphosizes every time it reappears, as well as the wall behind you being added to by the community and then that work again coming up. So we were just saying it earlier today, Michael and I, that as we go through it, it's like, how did I miss? Wow, have you seen this part? And it's pretty cool to just like see the different drawings that are up there. Even though we've been in this space all week long, that was the first piece we put up on Monday, and a little bit of Tuesday, and then as we're adding work today and working inside the space, it was kind of amazing to reactivate the space and see it more, even though we've been here looking at it all week long. There are some of these books that I've added into, and I have a whole set that I'm going to send up to David to bring into the space. Like Dave said, there's these community books that have traveled amongst the 16 different exhibitions. I don't think Dave mentioned that he has these strips of the, I want to say, 6x8 paintings.
These?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6x9.
6x9. He's got sizes that I can never remember. Anyway, he did mention that those are all his work, and he attaches them and unattaches them to make them into these like different shapes and sizes. So like, they're above and below the collaborative books that are on there. So I want to make sure I mention that, because sometimes he doesn't talk about all the work he does. He's really good at not giving himself props for everything that he does. He's actually amazing at that, not taking credit. So a piece of this is my work on here that David and I did, and then the three kind of diagonal double-sided paintings. A lot of that is mine. I like to work with other people a lot, like David talked about. So I've taken like collaborative elements. Like I always carry, it's right in front of me, one of these in front of me. So you'll see like little white spots where you can see the collaborative drawings kind of in the painting itself, kind of embedded into it. So the double-sided paintings are also a collage of some of that material, what's happening on site. The subject of the paintings themselves changes as time goes by, and I keep working into it and into it and into it. But it was really great to see them in such a big space that to be able to like step back and look at them. I'm so thankful for the opportunity that Corey and the Delaplane have given us to show here, and to be able to have this work up and to be able to really get a good look at it. I don't think I've been able to get this far away from them, and since I made them, I started making them at the University of Minnesota around 2017 to 2022, so in that space. I haven't like usually, you pull out a strip and you work on it a little bit. If you can imagine that there's 9 strips per painting, and each of them is 5 long. So if you can imagine this, if you have an 11 by 17 paper box and each of these panels is 10 by 16, you can fold any one of these paintings up and put it inside an 11 by 17 paper box. And then ship it to your friends for them to put someplace or to work on themselves, collaborate with you, and they can be that small. So to really get a giant painting, right, that's 5 feet, over 5 feet by 10 feet, and then how do you ship that, right? Usually an artist is like, I'm gonna put it inside a U-Haul and send somebody somewhere with it. And I'll pay to rent the U-Haul, I'll pay to rent the person that ships it, I'll pay the company that makes the box that you put the painting in, that goes inside the U-Haul, that goes to the institution when they open it and uncrate it. If you can imagine, all of that can be removed, and all you're doing is USPS shipping an 11 by 17 paper box instead. You've really reduced like $15,000 to $20,000 of your cost of shipping large paintings. So it makes exhibiting and showing your work much more feasible and possible, especially in this day and age when being an artist is such an expensive proposition. So these paintings are double-sided, which I really have a lot of fun with. I like the idea of a double-sided painting, and that also comes in with, anytime you have a sketchbook or these books, if you think about it, you work on both sides of the page. You'd like to work in it, even if you're working in Sharpie and the work feeds into each other, you start to make mistakes because you're working on one side with a material that folds on the other side, then you have to adjust the other side due to that. And like that, the paintings do much of that same work for you. They play back and forth, and the moves you make on one side accentuate what happens on the other side. And it relates back to a lot of the same stuff that Dave and I and Michael collaborate on. And I feel myself getting into a long diatribe, much like Dave said. So I'm going to pass this off to Michael. Michael is our amazing friend that we have added into this mix, and we are so excited that he's here.
So I'm Michael Dodson. This wasn't a part of the bio, mostly because it's my fault I didn't tell Corey this. So in December, I retired after 31 years of teaching visual art to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I am from Oregon, originally taught at a school, French Prairie Middle School, which is a little bit south of Portland, Oregon. And I met, I'm trying to think when, it was about 10 years ago, I went to the National Art Education Association conference, and I met Dave and another associate, a friend of ours, well, a friend of mine now, Eric, and they were presenting on visual journals, using them in the classroom. And so I went to a workshop with them, and it was very interesting to me. And they were doing another one where you could pick up a book and begin to collaborate with someone. So I went to that workshop, and I ended up picking up a book with Sam. So that's how that's my origin story with this. And it was similar to these books like this. I have one. In fact, I think we finished it, and now I think I have it. I think. But I loved it because as a middle school teacher, I don't have a big art department. It was me. So I was this solitary figure. And I think I'd kind of lost, well, I know I had. I'd lost my own personal process. My creative practice had sort of gone. Most of my creative energy went into coming up with projects for students, things that would be meaningful for them. And in that, I guess, following that process, I sort of lost myself. I didn't really know what was I interested in anymore. And it was really strange because I got this book from Sam, and I immediately hopped into it. And I think I was ready to exchange it back with him by the end of the conference. I think I mailed it back to him at the end. And it turned this light back on in me. And it was like, wait, you're a teacher, but you're also an artist as well. And you have to continue that. You need to develop that. And it altered my perspective my approach to teaching, the things that I thought were important that kids should understand how to do and to talk about and to think about. I began to include visual journals in my content with them. I wanted to use it in a way that could authentically reflect back to them their creative process as artists, because that's what they were. They weren't just doing assignments for me. I wanted them to see that they were on a creative journey of their own that was leading them in very unique directions. It wasn't all going to be sunflowers on white paper. They were all going to have their own projects. They were going to have their own subject matter, possibly even their own media of choice, whatever that was. But this was all kind of evolving in me, and I was trying to get this out to kids because I felt this renewed sense of inspiration. And that started with the visual journals. And I think it also inspired in me the fact that, or the importance of drawing on other people's perspectives and creativity and their inspiration. And it gave me this renewed desire to find a community of my own. And it started with these guys, and they're like brothers to me now, and I can't imagine my life without them. It makes me a little bit emotional to think about it. And even as I retire, I'm not gonna end that piece. But the visual journal thing and realizing it was sort of like the beginning point of what was going to be a larger creative process. So a lot of the ideas that I came up with, kind of spontaneously reacting and responding to things in my book or things that they had drawn or things that I'd been given by other people, that began to show itself in my own personal process. And so these 4 pieces right here, the larger ones, kind of represent that to me. The way that some stuff, as it begins to layer itself up and you begin to highlight or cover up or build on things that you like and that you don't like, or adding different kinds of media to, that sort of represents that, I feel, to myself or to me. I don't often use text in my work, but a lot of this messaging reflects stuff that I would say to my kids. Sam will attest to this. I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome. I feel like I don't really belong in the spaces that I try to put myself into, and I feel like I need to sort of earn my space there. And a lot of that involves some self-talk for me, which is like, hey, you got this, keep going. This could be an interesting idea. You know where you're going with this. Trust the process you're in. You have a voice, so use it. You belong in this place. You're safe here. And they were things I began to tell my students because I think they didn't necessarily see themselves as artists either. And so the journal, the visual journals, the work that they saw reflecting back at them, look, this is the stuff you've done. I didn't do this for you. This is you. This is who you are. Came along with this kind of messaging to them, which was this constant ongoing. Sometimes I repeated it over and over again in every single class, which is you belong here, you have good ideas, trust the process you're in. Something eventually will be meaningful to you. Take that and go with it. So that's kind of where the other stuff goes. The smaller pieces, they are risograph prints with an added embellishment. I can talk to you about risographs if you're ever interested in it further today. It's basically what I tell people is if a photocopy and a screen print had a baby, that's a risograph print, essentially. But if you're interested in more information about that, I can tell you. So that's it. All right. Thank you.
We're open to questions if anybody has questions. I think we all 3 feel like we talk too much. Yes.
I want to know what the name tags are all about.
Oh, okay. I knew somebody would ask. So Tetrad. So let me see. So Sam and I were at a National Art Ed convention or CAA convention. We were at a convention, and it was a whole bunch of art professors, and both of us were working in universities, so we were there presenting a paper we had written. And so we went to a talk that was focused on some French philosophy, Deleuze and Guattari, and things about the rhizome, and I'm not going to get into all of that, but something that we were very interested in, this idea of how a concept that and for us it was this idea of a concept that I have, how when I extend myself out to another person, how that concept can grow. So the rhizome is sort of a botanical kind of notion of a pod with stems and shoots, and it expands and it goes in every direction. So if you think of a tree, the roots go down, the branches go out, the leaves come out, that whole kind of thing. What if I was that little seed that started that tree? What would that look like? And how many people have I connected with, and where has that gone? So when I think of this work, it's in that sense of that rhizome of like one person can have that impact, and one person can start something, and it can make those connections. Were you gonna add, or can I keep going?
So this is, if you can imagine, thought prior to this was framed as a hierarchical concept where like your genealogical tree is flat, right? And it's up or down, that's it. You can go left or right, but you've got to be a sibling to somebody to go to the left to the right, right? And so thought was much framed in the same way, right? You think about histories of peoples or histories of thought or constructs or even movements in art, right? It's all left to right, up, down. There's no three-dimensionality in the construct of that, in the thinking of it, right? But that's not an organic way to think, right? Or to live your life and believe, all of those frameworks, right? So what rhizomatic thinking did for us was like, it was explosive to us. We're like, whoa, it like unframed all these things that were told to us were so flat, and all of a sudden we could see them in a different way. And in the same way, it did much the same for how we could think about collaboration and the way that collaboration could work amongst communities and how you could build community with an action as simple as collaborating in a sketchbook.
So all of that was happening. And we go to this conference, and there's a talk on the rhizome, and Sam and I are there with our sketchbooks, like, we want to go hear this. So we go in, we're sitting there, and we look pretty much like this. And we're drawing and writing in our sketchbooks, and there's people going up presenting papers, all in black and gray and funny glasses and things. And we realized that there was this whole group of them up in the front, and we're like, oh, it's like a club. And I don't look like the club, but I think about those things. And so they're doing these talks, and in a lot of this academic writing, there's a lot of play on words and a lot of play on concepts that can become very humorous when you start to hear the cadence of it. So it's almost like they were just sharing inside jokes with each other. And we're back there kind of looking at each other, kind of giggling a little bit. But these people are like falling on the ground laughing. And I'm thinking like, they haven't seen Saturday Night Live, have they? They don't get out much. And so we just realized there's a whole different thing going on over there that feels inaccessible. And so what we feel like we're doing, it's about community orientation. We want people to come in, so it's different. And so we connected with them, but then we realized we needed to disconnect a little bit. So just to make fun of it, we decided kind of like everybody knows the Power Rangers? Yeah, Power Rangers, are they still a thing? The kids are shaking their heads, they don't know what it is. So there's this TV show, and it was the Power Rangers. So we were like, well, we could be like Rhizome Rangers. So we came up with this idea that we were the Rhizome Research Resource Rangers. So it's 4 R's, and a tetrad is a thing that occurs in 4s. So after we had this, and we were like, well, that's gonna look kind of clumsy on a t-shirt, then we were thinking like, well, how could we make that like a label or a slogan or a logo or something? So we started researching stuff, and we landed on tetrad. So the R is like in parentheses, and yeah. And then, so what's that?
Say it again, rhizome research.
The Rhizome Research Resource Rangers. And if you make a drawing and it gets added to that wall, or you pick up one of those books and you put something in it, you become one of us, and you can take a power band, and when you leave the gallery, you're part of our club.
Art superhero too.
Yeah. So long story long. That's kind of like how that happened, and just kind of the same sort of weird stuff that happens over time when you're working on a project. And we wanted something to create some kind of a moniker. And then added on to that was the idea of the draw and play here, and really our friend Steve Lambert with his idea of I will talk with anyone about anything. We were like, well, you could draw with anyone about anything. And so draw and play here, a little bit easier to understand than tetrad. But we've written an article about it and stuff like that, so we've gone a little deeper with some of the stuff that we've done. But yeah, so now we have team shirts, and the whole idea too with this type of shirt was the idea of labor. As an artist, it's like I work. My art is my work. It's not my hobby. It's not the thing I do on the side. It's the thing I do every day. It's synergistic in my life. So when I go to work, I put on my work shirt. And so that's part of it too. Other questions for any of us? Yes.
Do you paint and cut out and then reassemble, or is it already kind of like cut out, but then you paint each part separately? Like, what's the process for this?
Right. So I would say yes to all those things. So many times the cardboard's on the wall. It's gessoed with a primer, and a painting occurs, but then that painting might move to another space, and I might have 5 other people there, and then they paint on it too. And then that might come back down, and when I take it to the next space, it may not go back to, because as Sam was explaining, it can come apart, and then this one might end up in a different box than that one, and then it gets reassembled, and something else can happen. So this wall would happen more kind of in that like-minded thing. The larger ones that Sam did here were probably I would say were more purposeful. They were on the wall specific to make that image, where this one was sort of, let's just see. And that's why I loved Dominie's kind of idea, like, oh, we did this, and then we took it down, we put it back up, and then this other thing happened to it, and then we took it down again, and we put it back up, and then this other thing happened to it. So it carries an interesting history with it. So it's almost like a dictionary, I guess. It's a history of its own making in a way, and it just keeps getting added to. And so then every time it goes up, it's different. Other questions for anybody?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
When I first looked into this, we're coming from the leaves and from Dominie's exhibit, I didn't see a connection to the two, but now you've essentially created a quilt.
Well, she did it. I was sitting right here, and when she said that, I was like, that's how these two shows go together. It's the same. I mean, seeing the way the prints and the fabrics, they're overlaid, they're stitched together. It's a very similar in process, way of thinking.
We use a lot of stencils and printmaking inside our painting process as well. I did an exhibition a couple of years ago called People I Love, and so I took T-shirts from all those people and I ground it up to make the paper, all these cotton T-shirts.
Oh, wow.
And then I printed stencils of their faces on the T-shirt paper, and so then we reused the stencils onto many of the images here. So you'll see, like, every once in a while, like, that's my aunt's eyeball there.
So they all used to connect and make faces, so that's where you can see how it all came apart, went back together, the faces are all.
That's the corner of my dad's head right there. Like they just
There's
kinda,
one of the stencils.
yeah, this is my friend Eva. She and I love weightlifting. She used to be my weightlifting gym buddy. So it a lot of that same mentality of like cut it up, reuse it, play with it again. How does it work now? How does it work now?
And don't have a plan that you can't change.
Yeah,
You know, if you,
Always got to be ready to
if you're
pivot.
going towards a goal and it's not working, but you're getting so frustrated, okay, I'm doing the goal.
let go and do something else. Yeah.
Yeah, our goal was a year and a half ago, we got to fill this gallery. And that's what we did. Anyone else? Oh, yes.
I'm not sure how to ask this. It's a
No.
little indelicate, but, do you ever, like, sell your artwork?
Yes. So everything on that wall is for sale. Everything over there is for sale. All these panels are for sale. It's all for sale.
I would say the other thing that's not for sale is the thing on the wall there.
Yeah, the big collaborative drawing. I think what I'd like to do with that is I do keep a large sketchbook. It's 11 by 14. I think I want to deconstruct that and literally glue it into a book and just have volumes of books of these drawings. And then next time we do a show, we can have a big collaborative drawing, but here's 6 books you can look through of drawings from previous shows and start to kind of document and archive it that way. It started on paper, it should just go back into paper. Well, thank you so much, everybody.